Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you guys how I used Lightroom to turn this photo into something like this. Let's open up Lightroom and get started. So the first thing I want to do is bring my exposure up, just so I can see the image a little more clearly. About there is good. And I also like to bring the temperature up so we can kind of get that warm summer feeling right from the start. About there is good. And I'm going to pull the tint back just a couple. That looks good. I'm going to bring the highlights down just to save a little bit more information. Kind of save a little more of that tree line. I'm also going to pull the blacks down just a little bit to add some more contrast. And also, before I edit the tone, I'm going to pull the vibrance up just so I can see that color pop a little bit more. Looks good. So now we're going to edit the tone. So right away I'm going to pull my blacks up. Then I'm going to add a few spots for my blacks, my midtones, and my whites. So I'm going to pull down my blacks just a little bit. Maybe about there. Pull up my whites a little bit. And then I'm going to pull down my highlights. It's important to just mess with these to get the look that you want. Any tiny adjustment really can change a picture. So I think about there looks good. So now we move to HSL. And down here we're going to click the Hue tab, and I'm going to pull the yellows down just a little bit to add more of a brown kind of tone into the background. And I'm also going to pull down the aqua so I can mute this aqua color in her hair so it doesn't pop too much. And I'm going to pull that way down because that's the only aqua color in this picture, so I really want to mute it. And next I'm going to move down to the split toning. And a great way to see what you're doing for this is to pull up your saturation. And you can add a color into your highlights that will only affect the brighter parts of your image. And then if you move down to the shadows, it'll add a color into the shadows. So this you just really have to mess with. It just takes a little bit of practice. But for me, and for this picture, I like to add just a little bit of a yellow. And I'll move the saturation up just a bit. Okay, and then for the shadows, we would want to do an opposite color. So I'm thinking maybe more of a blue or purple. Let's pull the saturation up. Maybe about there, kind of evens out. And I'm going to pull the saturation just down to about there. I think that looks good. And the last thing I do before I open up Photoshop is I sharpen the picture. And kind of have this ladder effect. Okay, I think this looks good. And now we want to open up Photoshop so we can edit out this hair and edit out some of the blemishes. So to do that, we're going to right click on the photo, go to Edit In, and click Photoshop. Okay, so now we're in Photoshop, and this is where I do all my retouching to remove hair, to remove blemishes, and things like that. And I'm going to make another video on this so I can kind of speed through this real quick to show you guys in more detail what I use and how I do it. So now I'm done doing all my retouching, and I'm going to save the file and go back to Lightroom so we can see the changes. So now we are back in Lightroom and we have the image that I retouched in Photoshop right here. So we have the before, the adjustments that I made in Lightroom, plus the retouching I did in Photoshop is saved as another file. So you can see a big difference from before and after. So now that we're back in Lightroom, I want to make a few adjustments. Let's go back up to the top, and I think I'm going to bring up the exposure a little bit more because we really want that bright summery feel, and it looks great on her skin. Let's bring the highlights down just a little bit. Bring the shadows up. Maybe bring the whites up a little bit too. And then I'm also going to pull the blacks back down just a little bit more. A little more contrast. And then I also want to come over here. Let's zoom in. I'm going to click the masking tool. And I'm going to add a new mask over her eyes. Make that brush a little bit bigger. Also over this eye. Then we're going to reset the exposure. And we're just going to bring the shadows up so we can really make those eyes pop. About there is probably good. I'm going to click done. So the last thing I'm going to do is add a gradient to the picture. Somewhere about here. Pull this down. We reset the exposure, and then we'll kind of slowly bring it down till we get something that we like. That can really help add a lot of contrast. Yeah, so I really like the way this image looks now. So hopefully you learned a couple things in Lightroom. Yeah, so thanks for watching. If you'd like to check out the rest of the photos from the shoot, I'll link my Instagram so you can check them out. We got a lot of good photos at a very cool location, and this model was great. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.